Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back to day 2 of Aqsa Week Kids. Our story today begins in Makkah, where a beautiful little boy was born. His name was Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu. Bilal's mum and dad were from Abyssinia, which today is known as Ethiopia and Somalia. His parents, Hamama and Rabah, were captured and made into slaves. Sadly, Bilal was also born into slavery. Life as a slave was so difficult. Being a slave meant that you were the property of a master who owned you. Often, the master would force his slaves to work very, very hard. In return, they would get simple meals and basic clothes to cover their body, even if that. Slaves were overworked and weren't given much respect at all. Often they would be spoken rudely and insulted. Life as a slave was not easy. Bilal's owner was a cruel rich man whose name was Umayyah bin Khalaf. Umayyah was also a chieftain in Makkah. He was so mean. He would force Bilal and his parents to work hard all day. He would even hit them and call them the most horriblest names. Whenever Umayyah would order Bilal to do anything, Bilal would do it so quickly, just so that he would have time to help his parents. Even though Bilal was so hard-working, his master Umayyah was never happy and treated him very badly. It was a strange time in Makkah. People didn't just worship Allah, but they also worshipped idols. The Holy Kaaba, which was once built by Prophet Ibrahim (as) for the worship of Allah and Allah alone, now had idols placed all around it. Umayyah, just like most of the people in Makkah, also worshipped idols, and he would order Bilal to worship idols too. One day, Bilal was near the Kaaba, and he saw a large group of people gathered around a man. When Bilal looked carefully, he actually recognized the man. It was the person who everyone called Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. Bilal had also heard his master speak of Al-Amin. Bilal wanted to hear what Al-Amin was saying, so he moved closer to the crowd. Al-Amin was telling the people to worship Allah and Allah alone. He said that the idols are just stones carved by people and they can't help or harm anyone. When the crowd heard this, they got so angry and started to call him mean names. Bilal quickly slipped away. He didn't want to get caught up in the trouble. Otherwise, he would have got punished by his master. Throughout the next few days, Bilal kept thinking about Al-Amin's words, that idols can't help or harm anyone. One day, Umayyah ordered Bilal to take the sheep and the goats to graze outside of Makkah. While grazing the sheep, Bilal couldn't believe who was there. It was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his friend Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Both the Prophet and Abu Bakr greeted Bilal and asked if they could get some milk from his animals. Bilal was honest and trustworthy. He told him that they would have to ask his master Umayyah, as the animals belonged to him. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu were both so happy with Bilal's honesty. The Prophet then asked Bilal if he could bring a baby goat that was far too young to give milk. Bilal brought the baby goat to the Prophet. The Prophet lifted his blessed hands and made dua to Allah. Immediately, the little goat started to give milk. Bilal was so amazed. The Prophet then explained that the milk was in fact a miracle from Allah, and that the milk had not been taken from Umayyah. The Prophet then asked Bilal to sit down and shared the milk with him and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Bilal was surprised because never before a person from such a noble background had sat with Bilal and shared a drink from the same bowl. After drinking the milk, the Prophet started to talk to Bilal. He explained that he was a prophet of Allah and that Allah had chosen him to guide the people to the truth, to worship only Allah and not the idols. Bilal listened very carefully. You see, Bilal already had doubts about the idols. Bilal then asked the Prophet, if there had to be masters and slaves, did some people have to be worth less than others? This question was answered by Allah. Allah revealed the following verse of the Quran. O mankind, we have created you from a single male and female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know one another. Verily, the most honourable of you with Allah is a believer who has taqwa. When Bilal heard this verse from the Quran, he became so happy. He was relieved to hear that everyone was created equal. Bilal understood it was the people who created these divisions between each other. Bilal actually accepted Islam, and he promised himself that he would never bow his head down to an idol ever again. When Bilal's master Umayyah found out that his slave Bilal had accepted Islam, oh, he was angry. He was raging. How could his slave humiliate him like this? So, in the morning, he started shouting at Bilal and hitting him. He said, "How dare you disrespect my idol?" Umayyah then dragged Bilal to the Kaaba, and in front of everyone, he started whipping Bilal. Umayyah demanded that Bilal apologise to the idols, and he also stopped worshipping Allah. He told Bilal, "Just say the names of the idols and the torture will end." But every time Bilal got whipped, all that came from Bilal's mouth was Ahad, Ahad, Ahad. One Allah, one Allah, one Allah. This made his master and the idol worshippers even more angry. Umayyah got tired of whipping Bilal, so he asked the other people to continue with the punishment. But still, the only words that came from Bilal's mouth was Ahad, Ahad, Ahad. They kept beating him all day and tied him up at night. During the dark hours of the night, when no one was watching, a few kind people who felt sorry for Bilal gave him some food and water and helped stop his bleeding. They couldn't untie and free Bilal because they were so scared of his master and the other idol worshippers. The following day, Umayyah again ordered Bilal to be punished. This torture went on and on and on for days. Umayyah placed a large hot stone, which was so heavy, onto Bilal's chest to make it harder for him to breathe and speak. Still, Bilal kept saying, Ahad, Ahad, Ahad. He dragged Bilal through the streets of Makkah Mukarramah, and still all Bilal would say is Ahad, Ahad, Ahad. Umayyah kept punishing Bilal for days with the worst torture and pain, but still Bilal refused to worship the idols. Bilal kept his promise to never bow before an idol again. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ learnt of what was happening to Bilal, he was so upset. He said, is there anyone who can help Bilal? The Prophet immediately wanted to go and help Bilal, But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was worried that if the Prophet went, it would further anger Umayyah. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went first. Abu Bakr got to the Kaaba as quickly as possible and saw Bilal lying down on the hot, burning sand with the large rock on his chest. He immediately moved the rock and checked that Bilal was okay. Umayyah angrily told Abu Bakr that Bilal was his property and his slave. Abu Bakr managed to control his anger and politely said to Umayyah, "Even if you believe in idols, what law did Bilal break by worshipping one Allah?" Umayyah screamed, "Bilal is my slave. He belongs to me. I am the one who tells him what to believe." Abu Bakr calmly told Umayyah, "I want to buy Bilal. Name your price." Umayyah cruelly laughed at Abu Bakr. "If you want him, I will not sell him for cheap. I want 10 gold coins." Now that was a very high price for a slave. But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu didn't even bargain and agreed to pay the 10 gold coins. Umayyah laughed at Abu Bakr and said, "He's not even worth 1 gold coin. If you had offered me 1 gold coin, I would have sold him to you." Abu Bakr gently smiled. "Bilal is my brother. Wallahi, if you had asked for 100 gold coins, I would have paid it. This was the worth of Bilal amongst the Muslims." Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went on and said to Bilal, "I make everyone here a witness that from today you are no longer a slave, you are a free man." Umayyah and his friends were confused and shocked. They just couldn't understand. Why would Abu Bakr pay so much to buy a slave just to free him? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu then helped Bilal stand up and took him home, where the Prophet was waiting for them. Once he had recovered, Bilal radiallahu anhu became a very close companion of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and helped him with his mission. Through Bilal radiallahu anhu's sincere efforts, so many people accepted Islam. One of the greatest miracles that happened during our Prophet's life was Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. This was a miraculous night journey that Allah took our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the Holy Kaaba in Mecca to the sacred Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. Our Prophet then read Salah with all the prophets of Allah in Masjid al-Aqsa, after which our Prophet ascended into the 7 heavens. During the Mi'raj, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam described how he heard footsteps ahead of him in paradise. So he asked Jibreel alayhi salam, "O Jibreel, what is this?" Angel Jibreel alayhi salam replied that this is Bilal radiallahu anhu. When the Prophet returned from his miraculous journey, he asked Bilal radiallahu anhu, "O Bilal, what is it that you do that I can hear your footsteps in Jannah?" Bilal didn't think he did anything special. He said, "When I do wudu, I offer 2 units of prayer." As more and more people accepted Islam, the Quraysh increased the bullying and violence against the Muslims. It was a really tough time for the Muslims. The Muslims had no choice but to leave Mecca and move to Medina, where they would be safe. So the Muslims began to leave Mecca in small groups, including Bilal. This journey was known as the Hijrah. In Medina, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, along with the companions, then built Masjid Nabawi. Our Prophet and the companions began discussing how to call the people to Salah 5 times a day. This wasn't a problem before, but now the Muslim community had grown so much. They came up with lots of ideas. Maybe we can ring a bell, or blow a trumpet, or maybe we could hoist a flag up high. But our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not like any of these ideas. Until one day Abdullah bin Zayd radiallahu anhu saw a dream. In this dream he learnt the words and the calling of the adhan. He quickly went to see the Prophet and told him about the dream. The Prophet was so pleased. In fact, after hearing the words of the adhan, Umar radiallahu anhu also rushed to the Prophet, telling him that he also saw the same dream. Bilal was known for having a loud and beautiful voice, so our Prophet chose Bilal and asked Abdullah bin Zayd to teach the words of the adhan to Bilal radiallahu anhu. This made Bilal the very first mu'adhin, the caller of adhan in Islam, and the honour of being the official mu'adhin of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Bilal radiallahu anhu was a very important member of the Muslims in Medina. He helped to teach the new Muslims in Medina how to read the Quran. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would often ask Bilal to distribute money to the poor. In this way, Bilal was a very first minister of welfare in charge of supporting the poor. Bilal was also part of the army that defended the Muslims from attacks. After 8 years in Medina, the number of Muslims had now increased. They were now ready to go to Mecca. With an army of 10,000 men, they marched towards Mecca. This was the very place they were tortured, humiliated, the place that they were forced to leave their homes, forced to leave their family, their friends, and their possessions. The people of Mecca were worried. They remembered the days when they used to torture Bilal and abuse the Prophet and hurt the Muslims. They were so scared, they thought the Muslims would now attack them, so they hid in their houses. However, when the Muslims entered the city of Mecca, they didn't come with arrogance or pride, but they came with humility and peace. They didn't attack anyone or take anything. Instead of revenge, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims forgave the Meccans. The Prophet invited them to Islam, to be brothers and sisters in faith. Most of the Meccans accepted Islam. Alhamdulillah. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam then went to the Kaaba with Bilal radiallahu anhu and cleared the Kaaba of all the idols. The Kaaba was now purified and now returned to being the sacred house of Allah. It was soon time for Salah, and the Prophet asked Bilal radiallahu anhu to call the adhan. Bilal climbed on top of the Kaaba and in his loudest and sweetest voice called out the most beautiful adhan. This made Bilal the first person to call the adhan in Mecca. The people who once tortured Bilal and mocked him saw how Islam had honoured Bilal radiallahu anhu. Our beloved Prophet passed away a few years after the liberation of Mecca. This was a sad day for the Muslims, especially for Bilal, who had known the Prophet for a very long time and had been one of his closest friends. After the passing away of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it became very difficult for Bilal to give the adhan because it reminded him of the Prophet too much. Because of the pain this caused, he stopped calling the adhan. Even though Bilal stopped giving the adhan, he continued to help the Muslims. He even joined the army who was going to free Masjid al-Aqsa. Bilal was there to witness the wonderful day when Umar radiallahu anhu peacefully liberated Jerusalem and Masjid al-Aqsa. Oh, the Muslims were so happy and joyful that Masjid al-Aqsa was finally freed. This was a very special place our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam visited on his night journey of Al-Isra. Unfortunately, the grounds of Masjid al-Aqsa was being used by the Romans for the throwing of their dirty waste and rubbish. So when Umar radiallahu anhu and the companions saw the rubbish, they started to clean it with their hands. As the Muslims were cleaning, it was time for Salah. But who would call the adhan? This would be a great honour, don't you think? Umar asked Bilal radiallahu anhu to call the adhan. Although Bilal had stopped calling the adhan since the Prophet had passed away, he could see the sincerity in Umar's request, and he agreed. So Bilal stood up in Masjid al-Aqsa and called the adhan. Now, as soon as Bilal started calling the adhan, everyone stopped. Bilal's beautiful voice brought the memory of the good days with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. This made everyone cry. Bilal was once a slave, tortured in Mecca, but now had become a hero for all. Bilal had been given the great honour of calling the adhan in the three most special places in Islam: the Holy Kaaba in Mecca, Masjid Nabwi in Medina, and now Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. After staying in Jerusalem for a short time, Bilal radiallahu anhu continued with the army towards Syria. He settled there to teach and spread Islam. Bilal radiallahu anhu eventually passed away and is buried in Damascus in Syria. May Allah forever be pleased with Bilal radiallahu anhu. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved Masjid al-Aqsa, and Bilal radiallahu anhu and all the companions also loved Masjid al-Aqsa. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminded his companions of the great virtues of Masjid al-Aqsa and the importance of keeping it safe. The Prophet even encouraged the Muslims to start their Hajj and Umrah from Masjid al-Aqsa. Our Prophet told us the great rewards of praying in Masjid al-Aqsa. He told us that each Salah read in Masjid al-Aqsa, the reward is multiplied by 500 times. We should all make intention to visit Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem and read Salah in this very special place. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.